starting. Aloha, everyone, and everybody online. Welcome to another one of our really fantastic College of Engineering Leadership Seminar Series, brought to you by our one and only Ken Hayashida and the Hayashida Ohana. Ken and Donna are very strong supporters of our leadership programs. We are fortunate to have Ken here, who was also one of our speakers earlier in the year. And then we also have one of our most recent speakers, Sutanto Wijaja from UH Foundation. He's one of our trustees who spoke, was it last month? Last month. Yes. So appreciate you folks coming in. I'm going to turn it over to our two fantastic ESAs, Josh and Ellie. But I just want to say, Governor and I have known each other for almost 25 years in the good old days when he was a freshman House of Representatives, and then he's progressively worked his way through, not that he didn't have a side gig working in the emergency room as an ER physician. But I have just been a huge fan of his from day one, from the day that we met. I was at the State Department of Transportation. Governor was just coming into politics because he saw a lot of the things that I think he's going to also talk about today. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but I've been a huge fan. We've been very good friends over the last 25 years. And I just appreciate him taking the time, coming to talk to our community, because it's very important, not only to hear from our business community leaders, but also our elected leaders, because they really help shape our culture, our way of life, our economy. And engineers, in my opinion, very unbiased opinion, we are really the main drivers and we have another one of our speakers that I just noted, Miss Leslie Wilkins, flying in from Maui. So thank you very much, Leslie, for being here. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh and Ellie, and they can take it over. Thank you.
And an observation, see this chicken skin here? This is a sympathetic response to the stories I could tell about it.
I'm trying to be nice to him, so he doesn't say anything.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh. With me today is Ellie, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the Leadership Seminar Series of December, presented by the Hayashida family. We have an amazing speaker today, so we'll jump right in. Ellie will start off by introducing our speaker, Governor Josh Green.
Hi, everyone. So Governor Josh Green is a proud husband, father, physician, and Hawaii's 9th governor. He was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Governor Green received his degree in both biology and anthropology from Swarthmore College and his MD from Penn State Milton as Hershey Medical Center at Pennsylvania State University. After graduating medical school, he completed his residency in family practice. He was then awarded a National Health Service Corps scholarship and chose a position to practice medicine in the underserved area of Ko'u on the Big Island of Hawaii. So he has served in the Hawaii State House of Representatives from 2004 to 2008. From 2008 to 2018, he served in the Hawaii State Senate, including as Majority Floor Leader, Chair of the Health and Human Services Committees, and Vice Chair of the Energy and Environment and Human Services and Housing Committees. And then in 2018, he was elected to be the Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii. As Lieutenant Governor, he saw the need for real solutions on homelessness and helped building college communities and the H4 Clinic to provide housing and healthcare for those most in need. When the COVID pandemic spread to Hawaii, Governor Green was appointed as the COVID liaison between the state and healthcare communities to coordinate pandemic preparedness, response, and mitigation efforts. As a result of his leadership, these critical emergency efforts resulted in Hawaii's having the nation's lowest COVID-19 fatality rate. Governor Green is married to Jamie Karani Green, and they have 2 children, Maya and Sam. He is inspired by the hopes, challenges, and values of Hawaii's families that encourage him to do his part for the people of our islands, and he is honored to serve as governor. So now we'll have Governor Josh Green begin with any opening remarks you'd like to share.
Aloha.
Thank you, guys.
I'm really absolutely thrilled to be here. I have all sorts of stories to tell, and I hope it'll be super informal between us. Okay, so please, anytime, anywhere, ask questions. I know we're going to have a robust time to do that too. I'll tell some stories though right out of the gate. First of all, Brendan, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sponsoring. This is means a lot to me. I absolutely love talking to people that are headed into their career or who are mentoring other young people in our state, because I know what the multiplying factor is. The effect is incredible for all of us. One person can make for 100 or even 1,000 motivated people in their discipline, sometimes even more. Or one of you will lead a big project. I have no idea which direction each of you will head, but I hope that some part of your careers will be, very deeply invested in Hawaii. And I know a lot of you are going to be here for a lifetime, but thank you. Thank you for being engineers. Now, I have a lot of life experience with engineers because my family ran an engineering firm from before I was born. That is what my background or my family's background is. It was green engineering, turned Green International over the years. So I grew up with my grandpa Sam. I was the first grandchild. I was born in 1970. He was born in 1910. He lived 97 years though. He lived a long time. He founded our engineering firm, and it wrestled like a lot of engineering firms do with survival and successes in the early days, and it became a big deal. And he ultimately had 12 different spots across the globe, and they built a whole lot of roads and bridges, and were involved in so many projects across the country. They were the guys that were called in when the arch in St. Louis didn't connect, when it missed by 8 inches. They were involved in recovery after major storms, and they were involved in just all sorts of different projects, really all over. So, like I said, as a little kid, I grew up from the first time I could be introduced to my studies on, an architect's table, and then with a bunch of engineers around me, and I mean a lot. We had 300 people from all across the world from our family alone come into the engineering firm. So you can imagine how many thousands of people ultimately were engineers with us. So I feel very comfortable and familiar with what you are all about. I also dated a very beautiful and difficult to deal with engineer during college, and so I have an additional familiarity with the discipline, and a wonderful person nonetheless. Not my current wife, however. Who was a lawyer from Richardson, so I went kind of Hawaii, but not engineering. So forgive me. Look, it's not just about building, it's about systems, it's about putting people together. Engineering is. You should know that when we go into these fields, I'll tell my story a little bit about being a physician that ended up in policy, but people should not forget, and we were talking about this right before I got to start, that a huge number of people that will lead Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest companies in the world will be engineers. My grandfather was one of them. We were this huge company with an engineer background, and a lot of our people went on to run companies all over the place, including at IBM and other spaces in the world. So what you get from your engineering education and experiences, and maybe your first couple jobs, may also be translated into running and leading across the globe. And it's because of the discipline, I think. It's because of the discipline that you get as far as thought processes and systems. A lot of people will be in high demand, and it's a great education. It's a great undergraduate education. It's a great master's and PhD education, whatever you choose. But it is a foundation, and I don't want to sound cliche, that will very likely lead to who knows what horizon. And it will not have to be building bridges like my grandfather and my dad. It could very well be looking outward. And outward to projects that we haven't even begun to really envision. I have no doubt that the world's going to keep changing really rapidly, whether it's artificial intelligence or just how globally connected we are. So it's exciting. It's exciting where you are. I'm happy to be here because as governor, I want to see us have new opportunities for our people. I absolutely love tourism. I spent all day yesterday with the tourism leaders from across our state. It's important to us, right? I mean, it drives our economy. However, we want every new opportunity possible for the next generation. And look, I've got a 17-year-old who will hear a week from today which college she gets into. You guys, I want you to be able to have opportunities that we didn't even dream of in past generations. And though tourism and the military are going to continue to obviously dominate large parts of our economy, we really do want to branch out. When we say diversification, it's not meant to be cliched. It really means, what can we do to build new opportunities for Hawaii going forward? And it's not lost on me when I see, for example, what South Korea is doing. The number of engineers that they are producing is unbelievable per capita. And their capacity to grow and to impact the global, kind of the global universe, the global environment, way outstrips their size. And I'm convinced after spending time with them and their, their leadership, that is one of the strategic moves that they made that was super smart, which was to graduate just a ton of engineers, because the multiplying factor appears to be unlike anything else that we see. So you are in a fantastic field. I say some of the similar things to the healthcare folks. Healthcare professionals also have a very good niche. They will have great jobs. They can be a part of a different part of our economy, but they are less likely to go and lead companies. Interestingly, doctors tend to kind of drive into their discipline, into their personal space. And that's a little different from what a lot of you guys may very well do. So it's really extraordinary to get to be with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I got into this whole situation, which was very unusual. And I tell this story because a lot of us had unusual paths, right? And my circumstance was, grew up in Pennsylvania, actually had a relatively slow start. When I was very young, I didn't speak for 2 years. And it's not because I was just, focusing hard. It's because I couldn't hear, it turns out. They thought I had intellectual disabilities, which, might have been one guess at what the issue was. It turns out I was deaf. And so I ended up spending 8 years catching up. And I was observant, but I had, I had a difficult time. And so my education started slowly. I had great teachers and great opportunities. And so I did ultimately catch up and started caring about things that were maybe less verbal. I spent a lot more time with mathematics. And that helped me. It helped me ultimately through my education. And I did what most firstborn Jewish kids do. I became a physician. Okay. And I really tell that joke because there was some expectation I might become an engineer, but I, in this case, wanted to branch out to a different field because I felt a competitive feeling between my father. I saw what my father and grandfather had built, and I wanted to strike out on my own. And that was just important for me. And so a lot of you may take that kind of consideration. You're making your own mark, making your own path. A lot of them wanted me to head towards this kind of a discipline, but first I went towards medicine, and I was lucky. I had a great public school education. I was in public school the whole time. Felt grateful for all the mentors I had. I had a lot of mentors from the family firm that were engineers that would help me study, and they would help me get ready for my AP test and help me get ready for college. So being a mentor, being good at what you do can make a difference. I went on to medical school and after college, and it was not easy. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I almost flunked out of medical school because I didn't yet have that full commitment to it. I still didn't know exactly what I wanted, and that's okay. What happened then was, after doing well in college and deciding in that moment to stick with it, I took a pause and I tried to reflect on what kind of doctor I would like to be. And I wanted to, impact policy. I wanted to go back and do humanitarian work. So I spent time abroad. I went to India and traveled extensively in India, where I saw incredible suffering, if I can, and incredible compassion. People took me into their homes. And that's when I decided for sure I wanted to commit myself and kind of get my act together and go through medical school and do well. And it opened up new doors. So medical school led to a fourth year. I finished med school in 3 years instead of 4. I did get things properly together. In that fourth year, they let me go abroad and be a medical mission doc, kind of in a non-denominational way. I mean, now I'm a Jewish guy married to a Mormon, so you can imagine I got all kind of religious, spiritual chaos going on. But I went and worked in the Catholic Charities hospitals and the Nazarene Church hospitals in Swaziland. Inside, so for those to remember, if this giant picture is Africa, Swaziland is inside of South Africa. It's a tiny little nation. A lot of poverty. We had a malaria outbreak. We had an HIV/AIDS outbreak while we were there. I mean, it was pervasive. 56% of the hospital was HIV positive. So incredible, as you can imagine. So we had two epidemics, the epidemic of HIV/AIDS and the epidemic of malaria. And so half of our hospital was hospital and half of it became an orphanage because so many parents passed away, or people, aunties, uncles were deeply in poverty, would drop their kids off. So experience like I never saw before. When we flew into Swaziland, they got on this plane with some pretty interesting looking guys. It turned out they were the 4 or 5 people in the front of this 12-seater. It was ZZ Top in the front of the plane. And they were on a tour and a safari. And then we landed, and when I got to the medical mission hospital, they took my passport. They seized my passport and the 30 boxes that we had brought into country because they thought we were smuggling drugs. It was antibiotics and HIV/AIDS treatments, which then were sold on the black market, which I then had to use family resources to buy back off the black market and bring back to the hospital. So extraordinary experiences. At gunpoint, they took my passport and got our passports back and did our duty. And that experience changed me because when you see 384 patients in one day in a malaria epidemic with 3 other friends and your entire electronic medical record, which I should say really is just your medical record is a 3x5 card, you see medicine very differently than what we see now. But we took care of those 384 some odd people. Hospitals were completely filled with, young men and women up and down the hallways, and we did what we could. And that was an experience that changed me. And at that point, I graduated, went to residency, and asked to serve in the National Health Corps. So you could see the path was changing as I went from India, which got me back on track to be a physician, to being in Swaziland, placed me in a place where I wanted to give back. And I asked to serve in the National Health Corps. Now, the National Health Corps, which is loan forgiveness for doctors and nurses, place you somewhere where you're needed. I thought for sure I'd be placed maybe Philadelphia or New York, being just a guy from that region, right? And in that particular year, they just didn't have any spots against all odds. And there was this little place, there were two or three places that they suggested I look. One was the federal penitentiaries in Oklahoma, which was bad. Okay, so I didn't do that. One was in northern Maine, where they told me you'd be on every other week, except they hadn't hired the other person, so you'd be on every week, which made me a little bit nervous. So I didn't go there. And then there was this place called Hilo, Hawaii. And I'm gonna just confess a little here. I had never been to Hawaii before. And if you want to know the total truth, I didn't even know there were multiple islands in Hawaii, which is very, because now I'm the governor. But I now know how many islands there are. At the time I interviewed, and the guy said, I'm not giving you a free trip to Hawaii, but because we get these calls all the time, but we'll interview on the phone. If we get along, then you can fly out if you want. So we did hit it off. A guy named Rick Custodio, who's still with us. He's a great guy. This is back in 2000. He was running a thing called the Bay Clinic, which is community health centers on Big Island. He's now over at Waianae and University, West Oahu part. We took a liking to each other, and he said, you can come work in the big city of Hilo if you really like, and be one of our doctors. And it'll be medicine like I described a little bit, where there's a lot of need. The day I landed in Hilo, the doctor in Kahu quit. And he said, well, now you're going to go work in the metropolis of Kau, Na'alehu, Kau. And how many of you guys have been in Na'alehu on Big Island? There's like 9 people. Right. I mean, there's 9 people work at the clinic. Everyone else is spread out. But the big area, the geographic area, 1,000 square miles, had no one else to provide healthcare. And so they assigned 8,000 patients to me that day. And I just became the doctor. Normally you get about 1,800 if you're a primary care doctor, maybe a lot less when you start out. So I had 8,000. And I became the doctor for basically 4,000 Filipino patients, 4,000 Hawaiian patients, and like 15 witness relocation patients from New York. And that was my life for a bunch of years. And it was just an amazing experience because I got to be connected to people. I was on call for 4 years, and people would pay me, which is to say the clinic, they would show up and money, they would give us produce, or one guy gave me a spear gun for the care. I treated a guy who won a Nobel Prize, who was just an incredible human being. And maybe I'll tell that story if we have more time later tonight. And I got a sense for what that community needed, which was drug treatment, alcohol treatment, and all sorts of behavioral health challenges were there. A lot of methamphetamine in the community on Big Island in those months and years, still for all of us. And I thought, okay, I'll run for office and maybe, make a difference or just make a point that we had these issues. And so I ran for office and it turned out that at the last moment, my opponent was a former cocaine dealer. And that came out and I ended up winning my first election. And I say this, this is a nice guy, actually. I mean, he got better. He didn't share that information with the electorate. And usually when you run against a convicted felon, you have a good result. But it's not always the case. Notwithstanding 2024. So I got to serve in the House of Representatives for a few years and it was a great experience because that is when I met dear friends like Brennan and Micah and Governor Lingle. They were running a great administration, really. And a lot of the legislators, some of whom are around today, Sylvia Luke was already there. She's now Lieutenant Governor. And so this experience was something else. I stayed on my track. I worked in the ER full-time all the way till 2022, which was when I was fortunate enough to get elected governor. So even during lieutenant governor years and the COVID pandemic, I worked full-time. Usually I carved out like a 72-hour ER shift in the weekends. And then I'd come back and do this job and go back. And I just felt like that was a way to keep doing both things and keep my experiences fresh. And one would inform the other. We saw a lot of people that were autistic or on the spectrum on Big Island, a lot of challenges, very little opportunities for care. So we took that concern and we ended up passing legislation so that anyone who is on the spectrum and their family's got a kid, they can get care. They get covered by insurance now. And same thing went for, remember I told you I ran kind of because we had drug treatment issues. We didn't have treatment options on the Big Island. Well, we increased the tobacco tax a lot and we created a statewide community health center system and the trauma system and also the cancer center. That's how the cancer center got launched. Half of that monies went to there. So they were real experiences and they ended up informing what I wanted to try to do for what we needed. So go figure, these experiences change your trajectory, right? I did not expect to stay in politics at all. In fact, I kind of kept running up figuring I'm going to lose and then I'll get to go run a hospital or a health plan or a community health center system or work with the Red Cross or something. Started a family with Jamie, great kids. And each time something intervened. And by the time I got to the lieutenant governor's job, which historically is useless, right? Nobody ever did what in that job. Here come to see that we get a global pandemic of COVID. So a couple things, 5 years ago today, I was standing in Samoa, exactly 5 years ago at the invitation of the Department of Health there and their prime minister, just because I was a physician and lieutenant governor now. And they said, could you help us vaccinate the entirety of Western Samoa? We have this measles outbreak. Caused, by the way, and forgive me, because in the 12 months before that, a very good-looking gentleman with a famous last name, Kennedy, went and told people don't get vaccinated. It's not safe. And so they didn't. And I'm not here to be on a pedestal about vaccinations or politics or what have you, but this person influenced a lot of people. And you, if you're in a position running an organization or your mentor could influence a lot of people. I could influence a lot of people. And so they stopped vaccinating for measles, basic stuff, right? But measles, unfortunately, will kill you. If you're young and your immune system isn't formed, or if you've got cancer, you have no immune response, or you can get measles and become deaf. You can have measles and lose your eyesight or have encephalopathy. And that's what happened in that country. So 83 people died. 5,000 confirmed cases of measles, plus probably another 25,000 cases that we never diagnosed, all occurred. So we went in, we asked humbly if people would volunteer. By the next morning, we got 485 volunteers. It's just the true nature of Aloha for people. 485 volunteers. We checked how many we could actually take and who were already fully vaccinated and immune. And we took 75 people. We flew 2 days later on a donated plane from Hawaiian Airlines. Flew back on Fiji Airways because Hawaiian only could take us one way, which was a challenge, but we worked that out. And we vaccinated 37,000 people in 2 days, us and the 300 additional healthcare people in Samoa. And measles just stopped. So there are things you can do. And why I tell that story is because I started getting confidential briefings 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, but there was this other virus coming out and we didn't know what it was yet, but it was going to be bad. And they were going to call it a coronavirus. And it had initials COVID. And there you go. So COVID-19 broke out right then. And at that moment, I realized, well, we had to take real action because we could see it coming from Asia. We knew it was in New York already. And I don't know how many of you know this, but like take Kauai, for example. Kauai, we only have 9 intensive care unit beds total on Kauai, and we only have 15 ventilators. Yet we had this virus coming that was likely to cause acute and severe respiratory distress syndromes. And it was just going to kill a lot of people. And that became the work of the next 2 or 3 years. And not perfect, mind you, but the experiences that happened, at least for me, in Swaziland, in India, in Samoa, all informed what ultimately I was able to at least be a part of and the leadership team to make sure that we did most of the right things, probably 8 out of 10 of the right things. Probably 2 out of 10 were wrong or not fully informed. But what that ultimately meant was our mortality rate was about 1/4 of what the mortality rate was in all of the other major states. So instead of us losing, we projected deaths, 4,779 deaths per year of the pandemic. And we were going to have 3 years of this. So we're going to have 13,000 deaths. We ended up having a tiny fraction of that, much closer to 2,000 people passed away. And so essentially 11,000 lives were probably saved because we did a few really important things. Did they have consequences? Of course they did. But one of the main consequences is we saved 1% of our population's lives. And we were able to save our economy because we had a mechanism then to reopen with a test. It was a process question. It wasn't just going to save you, but we knew fewer sick people would come, and therefore we'd have more capacity to open up, and we were going to get federal dollars and dollars from travelers, and we ended up doing well. And that has set into motion our ability to do other things like rebuild Maui, like pay for scholarships for social workers, all sorts of things. So that's a long version of the story of how I ended up with a medical background ending up as governor, because after the pandemic, people knew me. And again, I'm not a perfect person, but perhaps my opponents were less perfect, and I was able to, succeed and become governor because of an experience or a set of skills that I learned all along the way. And I certainly did not anticipate that road. I am still somewhat stunned that I ended up in Hawaii, and I'm completely amazed that I got to be governor of our state. But if you decide you want to be very engaged, you can use your degree to great advantage. I mean, to incredible advantage. And I think that's the message I really want to tell you. I mean, I am so grateful for the opportunity to serve, to make big decisions now, which I try to make based on those experiences. They're an eclectic cluster of experiences, but that's probably the way it is for most people. There's never a straight line. So if you're wrestling right now, if you're a second year or third year and you're wondering, is all this hard work becoming an engineer worth it? Let me just say, yes, it definitely is. It will set you up very well to do extraordinary things. And I would highly recommend that, putting great underpinnings into your career rather than the alternative, which might be just trying to go straight for a discipline like politics. I would never recommend that to anybody. I would always say, go and do something that skills you up. And if you end up in a position to do even more than your profession asks, great. You don't have to. You can have a great career along the way, straight with engineering, but you will have opportunities, I can assure you, because you have a great program here. There's great leaders that are running it, and there's something special about Hawaii. We're still always trying to define what that is, but there's a mystique, and it's probably just based on the values that we have, which are very different from the mainland. And I've seen, as I compare what we are to other states. So what I'll do is, if I can, I'll pause there. There are so many stories to tell. I'm open to sharing anything about where we are in the state. I can tell you the state's actually in pretty decent shape, but that doesn't mean we can't really take it to the next level. And humbly, I would say that the university is what will take us there. The university is the driver that gives us opportunities, whether it's through big grants and then research. We were speaking a little bit about the unexploded ordnance work that's going on. There's going to be billions of dollars that come to us from the military to do important things. We should be a part of that. We should lead that. And we should make sure that we position ourselves better than anyone to link the world, to connect, I think, mainland US with Asia. Because we are not the 50th state on the outside of the United States looking in. We're actually the 50th state smack dab in the middle of the universe between Asia and North America, really well positioned to lead in the future. So thank you, guys.
All right, for this next part of the seminar series or leadership seminar, we'll have a Q&A with Governor. So audience, feel free to raise your hand and ask some questions. If you're on Zoom, feel free to type it in the chat. I can ask the first one. When you first entered like the state legislature as a House of Representative, was there someone that kind of helped you transition into this position, and like anyone that kind of like guided you or took you under the reins?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I came from the neighbor islands, from Big Island, and there was a group of kind of the old guards there. But when you come in as a young representative, you are a little bit dismissed and put on the side, and you're asked to just kind of watch and study. I felt a little differently because I came in thinking that I would like to, at least from my discipline, be a leader in healthcare. And so I was a little bit separate. I'll tell you a funny story. At the end of the first year, I'd already been in for a full year. The Speaker of the House, we were having a party, a Christmas party or something like that. And Speaker of the House said, "Hey, it's so nice of you to be here." And he didn't remember my name. And he said, "It's so rare we get a young Republican coming to the Democratic Party Christmas party." And I smiled and I thanked the speaker and I didn't correct him that I was a Democrat and elected into his body and I'd been there for a whole year, you know. Sometimes you are overlooked a little bit. I will tell you, I did not have a lot of mentors during my years in the legislature, but that's partially my fault probably because instead of being here to do politics, I would go back to our island and I just did a shift constantly. I mean, I worked like 44 shifts a year, 44 weekend, which were the long shifts each year to take care of my family and to have this other life. And so I didn't come and do politics like a lot of people do. So I didn't develop a lot of deep relationships in that way. There were some cool people. There was a guy named Dennis Arkaki, who was the chair of the health committee when I first came in and retired 2 years later and gave me the health committee, which was very kind of him. And he was really thoughtful about it. We had very different backgrounds. We even have fairly different ideologies, but that was different. Like I mentioned earlier, so I would go to Governor Lingle, who was governor at the time, even though we were different parties, I would give her flowers and say, "Look, I'm here to just kind of do something right for Kona." And she would then do very good things for our community there, because normally there could be some partisanship, whatever. And she developed some trust in me and she would give me bills that she wanted to put in that were otherwise getting killed because of partisanship. So I put them in as my own, but that's what she wanted. They would often then suddenly pass because the partisan thing got, washed. And I will tell you that all of our appropriations for Kona got released first, which again, a lot of my Republican colleagues were like, "What the heck are you doing for this guy in Kona?" And she probably didn't explain to them why that happened. But the truth is, because we really work closely together. And so one of those appropriations, the first one I ever got, was for the community health center over there, which is what I really wanted to do. So we went from me volunteering with the Salvation Army, one doctor, working just a few hours a week, filling prescriptions, hole in the wall, to getting the state to give $425,000. Aloha Care gave $250,000 grant. Then the federal guys approved our application for, to be a qualified community health center. And now they hire and employ over 400 people. The entire healthcare system of West Hawaii is basically that. So these moments end up becoming something significant. And so I'm thankful to Governor Lingle. I'll tell you a story about Governor Abercrombie. So I was a junior. So after Governor Lingle's 2 terms, Governor Abercrombie came in. I was only a couple years in at this point, but I wanted to, curry favor and get him to understand I really wanted to work very hard. So I was living downtown, during the session. And one day a bunch of protesters were outside Governor Abercrombie, the governor's house, where I live now, okay, the governor's residence. And they were protesting and screaming pre-dawn, and it was pretty nasty. And they had signs and stuff. So I called him up at maybe 4:45 or 5 in the morning. And I got his answering machine and I said, hey, Governor Abercrombie, sorry to bother you. This is Josh Green. I'm the state rep from Kona, but there's some really nasty protesters outside your house yelling, maybe go the secret way down to the Capitol. Don't get yourself in trouble. And left the mess. Thanks, just so you know, again, this is Josh trying to look out for you, Governor. And didn't hear back from him. And then the next morning, exactly the same thing happened. There were people, even more protesters. They had signs. They were protesting a death penalty question. And they were nasty. They were yelling at him and screaming. And it was pre-dawn. And I again called Abercrombie up. And I said, hey, Governor, again, terrible situation outside your house, outside the governor's residence. Don't come out. I got your back. Don't come out here. It's going to be bad. Just again, this is Josh. I want to help you out. And no call back. And then the third day, I call again. Third day, again, these protesters were raising hell about Abercrombie and the death penalty and how bad he is and so on and so on. And I call him and he answers the phone this time and he says, Green, stop calling me. They're filming Hawaii Five-0 outside my house. Sometimes you gotta be a little careful when you're trying to kiss up. There are moments, okay, and you learn from these moments. I've now done a lot more research before. And I will tell you, I'm now the governor and I get calls from junior representatives that are equally stupid. And I say it. Oh, right. So, there's just a lot of moments out there and it's fun. It's fun to do this and it's fun to be a part of things, but I didn't have a lot of mentors, but that affected me. So I'm trying to be a mentor to a lot of people. In fact, the reason I'm here, I'm not trying to be your mentor, but I'm trying for 1 hour in your session to share what some of the possibilities are. And I do take a lot of interns into our office and we use that to let them see what government's like, work on projects, and then we, power up their applications in case they want to go into, great things here or mainland or wherever.
What kind of qualities would you look for, I guess, in like a mentee or something?
Sure.
Yeah.
I almost always look for someone who's excited about participating. I never worry what discipline or ideology they have. And I notice because I know when people are gung ho, they often will try to impress you in like my previous example, and they'll say things. And sometimes if they're trying to impress me with an ideology or whatever, they may just as well miss the mark. I mean, it's very possible. I've had people say all sorts of things that they think I have one ideology and I just don't. I don't hold it against them. I try to make sure if they're energetic and they're going to participate, we go all in for them. So it's really that. And the experiences I've had have been great with young people. I also tell people, come work for us, but do it just for a couple of years and then go do your career. And then maybe you'll come back to it at the end. Don't get involved in a government staff unless you really know for sure, deep in your heart, that you're going to make a life out of government policy. Go and do a bunch of different things because you can come back to it with more experience. And that's been a very successful road for us to recruit people over the years. Now, I only had a very small staff, by the way, for a long time. In the state house, you only have one full-time person and a half-time person additionally for the rest of the year sometimes. You get your staff for the committee and that's it. They go then off to the job. Senate had 2 people. Lieutenant governorship, you'd think it's a big job. I think we had a staff of 12 total. We make use of other experts and bring people in, but even then small. Now, I will admit now I have a really, massive team. And all the people that I worked with before are with me from pretty much the early days. And then now hundreds or thousands of people that are, interested. And I'll add something to your question. What do I look for in an employee? Doesn't matter if they're very conservative right of center, very far left of center politically. It doesn't matter at all. If they care about people, I will hire them. And if they continue to work hard, I'll promote them. So that's really how it works. And it's not based on ideology because it turns out almost everyone wants the same stuff. They want good opportunities for themselves and their family. Usually it's education and some kind of decent job. They want to be safe and they want to have the basics. And that's almost everybody. These battles we get into over abortion or trans issues or opportunities to have weapons of mass destruction in your household to blow everybody up. That's a very small group of people compared to the large center of individuals that want just a decent, life. And that's really where we have to go. I don't know yet how long it's going to take the Congress to get there. But when I hang out with the governors, and I'm going to go on a trip to see all the Western governors tomorrow night, we're always talking about the stuff in the middle.
Thank you. In the early 1990s, one of our professors here wrote a book, Who Runs the University?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
I'm not,
Oh, okay, well, basically he concluded that we're making a good case. It wasn't the regents, it wasn't the president, it was the legislature.
yeah.
And I recommend you read the book.
Yeah.
And has anything changed during that time?
No, not completely. So one of the great challenges, and this is something I've pushed back my whole career, is that there's much too much micromanagement of the legislature, of the university from the legislature. It's a terrible, terrible circumstance, and it has to change. And so I've pushed back on that. I've actually this is gonna sound like in the weeds, but I vetoed a bill that was extraordinarily micromanaging of the university of this last session and pushed it away. It would have blown up all the RCUH work that we had the capacity to do. And there's a fundamental difference between a legislature and an Institute of Higher Learning. They're just different bodies and shouldn't be that way. We're in an interesting place because we have one primary university and a very insular legislature, most of which is here based on Oahu. So there's some competitive jealousy that occurs. There is, I don't know, I'll just be totally blunt today. Okay, so I thought about this a lot. Like, why do legislators sometimes micromanage large pieces of the university? One of the things that I saw behind closed doors is that, and I'm mindful that I'm on Zoom now, so I don't know who's watching. Legislator, please turn your cameras on. When I came into the legislature, people were earning $32,000 a year. It's not that long ago, okay? And even now, it's not like a super dynamic profession. You probably have to do something else to survive in Hawaii. And some professors are in a great spot. It's a very good profession, and that can be said of course lawyers and doctors and all sorts of other professionals. But there is the capacity for the legislature who is getting paid way less and thinks that they have the capacity to run everything. There's a little bit of jealousy, I believe, towards some of the university and the autonomy and freedom. And we all know in higher education, intellectual autonomy is important. It's really, that's the mother's milk of innovation. And so that jealousy, I'm afraid, has continued. I won't let that happen. I don't micromanage the Board of Regents even. I give them a chance to just be who they're going to be. And sometimes it's a wild situation. We all know Abercrombie, right? So he was a governor, and I put him back in there out of respect, and he's got some great ideas, and sometimes he's batshit, right? So, but it still is new ideas, and it's people putting out opportunities, and I do like that. I think over time, the legislature should just let the university just run the way it wants to run. Couple of small caveats: we have to be in charge of getting enough infrastructure to the university so we can attract lots of students and faculty. That's an important thing.
Hi, Governor. So I'm very intrigued by your vision to want to diversify the economy here. What potential do you see in what industries that you want to diversify into?
Yes, thank you. So if you couldn't hear the question, is where should we diversify? And what I mentioned earlier is using the university as an incubator for opportunity is a great machine to do it. But what disciplines ultimately? So there's a lot of thought on this subject. First of all, we do have an opportunity to diversify into health, science, and research. Okay, that's something that has a relative small footprint, but can have a huge impact So School of Engineering is important. Computer engineering is, I think, very possibly one of our big upsides. Whatever we can also do to connect us and Asia, whether it's China, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, I think is going to be in our interest. I think there's going to be a lot of resources there. And it's not pure diversification, when I mentioned this next one, and that's research that also touches the military. But a lot of times that leads to advanced technology that's going to help us in other fields, and of course, in the military, which we should be at least mindful of as important to our country. That's a big deal too. But that sector is already pretty well developed. But the science and technology part maybe doesn't get quite the home that we would like it to have here in the islands. So those are some of the areas. I'll tell you that I'm mindful of what UHERO has told me. They do a great job. I'm very grateful to them and their advice they give me. One of the, and they can't believe I remember this chart, but they showed me a chart one time where they showed tourism was a block like this, right? And then they showed the other, parts of our economy. And they said, we may very well want to diversify directly off of tourism and do subsets of tourism, because we already know how to do that well. And we already have a reputation. So that's a big deal. That means like sports, tourism. And now it's not as exciting intellectually, but it can generate a lot of revenue to do other things. I have high hopes for research, cancer research, and so on. I think that's good for us. I think that we have to support the Cancer Center. And I think that it could be very well biomedical engineering that comes out of here, which could be a very good thing. I would also say anyone who's working in cybersecurity, that's going to be a very big deal, and we have a lot of capacity and experience with that. We are pummeled by cybersecurity threats constantly here in Hawaii, and I don't know if you know it, but we have more military generals in Hawaii than any other part of the country except for Washington, D.C., because of the Indo-Pacific. So there's a reason, and there's a lot of embedded work that goes on in security in general out of Hawaii. So that's just some of them. I like a lot of different things. I like to see entrepreneurs get going, and so we're trying to support them. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that film is something that's pretty exciting. I like the idea of being able to tell stories. So I'm very supportive of studios and sound and filmmaking. All these things are key, but I will finally tell you that we are so good at what we do, which is inspire the imagination of what Hawaii is. It will be hard to overcome that for the rest of the world. People will always see us as something special and something that they are fascinated by. And that's just after 20 some years of travel. It is a powerful force. And if that can be tapped, each and every discipline will benefit. When they hear that you're from Hawaii and you start a Peace Institute, you're from Hawaii and you're doing some of, the incredible work that is being done on what it would be like to be in space. There's some things we do here that people are going to be amazed by. And again, that was a very different road. It started with a video game and an engineering mind, I think, and it became an empire of opportunity. And so when I reflect on how you get there, there's lots of different roads, but people are going to still think they're from Hawaii. And I think that's okay. I think it makes us special.
Governor, not to put you on the spot, but could you say a few words on the status and future of the rail and Red Hill?
Sure. Red Hill, you could throw in the TMT if you want to make it just a trifecta. So the rail will get finished. When I say finished, it'll get down ultimately to Ala Moana. That's where we're going to go. So it's important to us now. For full disclosure, I voted against the rail, which was the reason I did is because I saw it as too large a project at the time, the way it was designed, given a state that had other needs. And I was a neighbor island legislator. But I now see the value of what it can be, which it can be a place where we build housing, which we have to have. Housing is probably our greatest challenge. Also, we're going to see at the stop at the entertainment district where there will be a stadium, and many mahalos to Brennan for that work and keeping that alive and keep people faith. That's going to be big to attract people. So the rail will get done. Will the rail then be directed to Manoa? I mean, that's next gen questions. I don't know that, and there's some young people in this room, and I'm not sure that they will be around when that gets resolved. You know, so first, let's just get it done and get it done in kind of a straightforward way. And let's also learn the lessons we have from it, which is let's have better design so that we can get done faster. I'm really about getting things done more quickly. Because you burn money and opportunity in the years that we lose. So that's one. Red Hill, a terrible disaster. We will be made whole by the federal government for whatever losses there are. The biggest challenge right now, of course, is the quality of water. If we lose part of the water table, we lose our capacity to build houses and grow. And so Hawaii could shrink. I mean, we could shrink our population, or people would have to find a very complicated path to go and live on other islands. That's really hard. So we see it's much easier to move to the 9th island, you know, Nevada and Vegas, than it is to move, frankly, over to Kauai because of cost and housing available and so on. So, but we're okay right now. The water contamination seems to have been contained. One of the challenges of coming into a new administration is got to learn new people. But I am anticipating that they're going to make good on keeping us, you know, healthy and whole. So that's a big deal. I sure would love someone in this room or somewhere else in the university to come up with the solution on desalinization, though. You know, that would be incredible for us. And I know that people are working on that, and we have partners all over the world, including in the Middle East. But if we had a good solution that was energy neutral, maybe you have the solution, I don't know, but someone's got the solution. And if we get that solution, we're going to be much better off. We need water for many, many things. And then the TMT, I might as well mention it now that I've got myself in this deep, right? The TMT should proceed the way the people on the Big Island and the Hawaiian community believe culturally it can proceed in a respectful way. I would love to have the telescope, but the footprint on a sacred place has to be respectful, and it can't divide us. It just can't be allowed to divide us. There may be pathways though, and I think that the Kiai, the protest, if you will, made the point, which is be respectful of culture for several generations, and maybe that can be done. Because a telescope that goes up on the mountain, if it went up on a footprint that's already being used and it came down, say 40 or 50 years later, which it would, because technology will change and that would be the lifespan of that technology, we would have, of course, many generations thereafter that would still maintain the sacred nature of the mountain. So that's the real discussion that has to happen. There is a group of people working on it. There's now a new mayor and there's new council members. They have to all weigh in. But from the university's perspective and from astronomy's perspective, we absolutely should do it. From the perspective of total culture, we have to come to terms with each other.
Thank you, Governor. I just want to be respectful of his time because I know he has to kick off he has a state to run this afternoon.
So join me again to thank Governor Green for joining us today. And we have one of our other former speakers, Hank Rogers, who showed up. So I've never seen another speaker attract as many former speakers today. So thank you again. And again, you know, thank you all for joining us here to hear from our various leaders in our state. Always thank you to Ken Hayashida, who's in the room, and Ken and Donna Hayashida and the Hayashida Ohana for sponsoring our leadership programs and specifically this leadership seminar series. Hopefully everybody is going to have a great holiday season. This does conclude our seminar series for the year. I can't believe we're completing our 4th year now of our leadership seminar series. We're looking forward to our 5th year next year. We'll be re-engaging again in February. Again, it's always the first Friday of every month during classes. So we'll start again in February, take a break during the holiday season. So please have a safe weekend, and more importantly, have a safe holiday break for our students. So you guys, semester's not over. So. And then you guys can take the break. But again, thank you very much. Thank you, Governor.